Plus, hey, I
Um,
died twice. After that, there's not a whole lot to fear after that. So,
Interview done.
yeah, exactly. It's like, like people were saying, well, are you afraid of answering this question? Are you afraid of answering that question? I said, well, how would I be afraid of anything after, once you died? I mean, there's really nothing after that that can really make you feel fear, you
No,
know?
that's a recurring theme that we hear all the time. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
Andrew, I am very excited to speak with you today. You've lived through more than most people can even imagine. You've had 17 traumatic brain injuries, which I'd love to hear more about that as well. You've also had two NDEs. So, if you would mind just to take us back to the beginning when it all started.
Absolutely. Glad to be here with you as well. Just to kind of give you an overview, I had my first near-death experience at the age of 7 from a really bad virus that affected the area around where I lived in Western Massachusetts in the United States, and affected probably 4 or 5 dozen children, all of them under the age of 16, and I put I'd say probably all but a handful of those into the hospital, and then of those, maybe 4 dozen that ended up in the hospital, a dozen of those ended up going into comas of varying lengths, and then of those dozen, 5 actually died during the coma, and of those 5, I was the only one that they brought back. So it's kind of a unique position to be in, and not one I'm particularly fond of, but um, I guess I'd rather be here than not here. Um, and that near-death experience was more it was more centered around me because at that particular age, I hadn't started first grade yet, and uh, I was able to. I was told basically a long list of things that were going to be coming in my life, including the traumatic brain injuries, as you mentioned, and which most of them were from bullying that was mentioned, abuse from my mother was mentioned, um, and eventually at the end of that list was a brain condition called CTE, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is a condition that tends to result from multiple brain injuries over time. And I was told that that would eventually curtail my life, shorten it by an amount, but I wasn't told like I was never told exactly when I'm going to die, but I'm going to die sooner than most. But that, it was not about, like, one of the things that was very much emphasized to me was it's not about how long you're on this earth in each lifetime. It's what you do with the time that you have. So that was my, um, it was told that, this is what you need to focus on. Don't focus on the longevity. Focus on what you're going to do with the time of that you have in your life. You want to help people, and I was told that that's why I came to this life, and there was a lot of details involved with that I didn't find out until my second one, which I'll get to in a little bit. But the first near death experience was very. It was at the same time it was scary to begin with, because when I first went into a coma, I was in a coma for 4 days before I died, and basically I'd had severe dehydration. I had a fever of 101 when I went into the hospital Within 48 hours, it was 104, which is I think around 40 degrees centigrade for those who use that system. Um, and then uh, when everything finally hit, it topped out at 107 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 41 and a half centigrade. Which basically at that temperature, your brain is boiling inside your skull. It's you don't live very long when once you reach that temperature. And I was basically in a dark space for most of that 4 days leading up to the actual point of death. I was not aware of what was going on around me. They did several pain stimuli tests to see if my body reacted, and I didn't. Um, they, I was basically, if you want to describe it, I was in a limbo state. I wasn't fully awake, but I wasn't dead. And so it was just this darkness, and I felt like I was just floating in nothingness, and time just didn't have any meaning for me at that point. But when the what I found out later on from my grandmother, what happened, the my heart and lungs and brain, those are the last three organs to shut down from what's called septic shock or septicemia. And my heart and lungs went first within, I'd say, 10 minutes of each other. And then about an hour later, my brain, basically, the signals from that started to shut down. And that's when they called a code. And, well, they called a code for the heart and lungs, but they really kind of ramped it up when the brain started to shut down. Because once you have brain death, you don't come back from that, or at least most people don't. And at that point, when my brain went offline, that's when I woke up in here. Um, I found myself in a far corner of the hospital room that I was in. I could see a body laying in the bed. I didn't know yet that it was me. I could see multiple doctors and nurses working on me. Two doctors, I think four nurses were around me. My grandmother had been pushed out into the hallway, and all she could do was watch me through the window and the door because I was in what's called an isolation tent because they didn't want, anybody with this virus, they didn't want to put you in a room with anyone else. And the isolation tent basically was a high oxygen content to try to force the oxygen into your bloodstream a little bit faster because I wasn't getting the oxygen level that I should. And but like when the brain shut down, I went to the corner of the room. I was watching the doctors work on me. I could see like one of them was had a bald spot on top of his head, and I knew it wasn't. I didn't recognize the doctor when I came back. Like I saw other doctors and nurses, but I had seen this one guy that I didn't see afterwards, and I remember describing him to one of the nurses who came to check my vitals later on, and she said, "Oh yeah, yeah, that sounds like Doctor. I can't remember his name, Doctor Johansson or Johnson, something like that. Something again with J." And when she brought him in, and I said, "He looks kind of familiar." I said, "Can you bend over?" And he bent over. I saw the bald spot. I said, "Yep, that's you." They didn't really believe. They just thought I was imagining things, or that there was a part of me that was still aware, but it wasn't the case. I mean, I certainly couldn't see the top of his head lying down on my bed. Um, but anyway, while I was in the corner of the room, I heard a voice inside my head, a very deep what I call sing-songy type of voice. It's very melodic, very calming, and I found out later this voice belonged to what is my main guide on the other side, who I have met uh, over the last my last three lifetimes, the times in between, while it's on the other side, I have met this being, spoken with him, and one thing about him that is very interesting is he's not human. He belongs to a species that actually lives on the other side of the galaxy in a star system we can't actually see from here because it's on the other side of the galactic center, which we currently cannot see through. Um, but anyway, he explained to me that I was dying, but not fully dead yet, and I had no concept of what dying meant yet. No, nobody in my family had died. I'd never had even a pet die. And he said, "But you're going to be okay. You'll be fine." And when they called the code, and um, I heard the machine flatline, like the brain, the brain feeds, they flatlined. Everything flatlined at one time, and they started panicking. And at that moment, but I felt completely calm because nothing. I didn't feel any different on the, in the position that I was in. Uh, and at that point, see, before that, I couldn't see the being that this voice belonged to. But as soon as I officially died, that's when I could see him, as well as two other beings that were with him. One female, that had a female energy to her, and the other one had a mix of male and female. And I don't know exactly how to explain that one, but um, like every being has a certain energy signature. That's how we recognize each other on the other side, because most times we don't look like this. We don't look like we do here because we have different bodies in different lifetimes. So it doesn't make sense for us to hold on to one body versus another when you live, hundreds or even thousands of lifetimes. Um, but the beings were like an amorphous blob of light. There was no specific shape. It's just like a fluctuating blob of light is the only way I can think of to describe it. And they were all kind of a bluish green color, with a center that was the brightest white light, like pure white light that I'd ever seen. And but none, it was not blinding. No light I ever saw there was blinding. Even the brightest light, I could. It's not like you're looking with your human eyes, where, oh, squint. It's not like that because you're looking with different eyes. And my guide was the only one who ever spoke to me. The other two I found out later were just what they call observers. Some beings are being trained how to help other people once they pass and cross over, and to acclimate them to the other side. And so they assign them to a being who's been doing it for a while, kind of a trainer, if you want to call it that. And my guy said, you've died now. You need to come with us. And I could feel myself float right through the corner of the ceiling, out of the building, and it went dark for a few seconds, but it wasn't like before. I felt I could feel like I was going somewhere. It didn't feel like I was just stuck in nowhere, like before. And when I next came to, or opened my eyes, or whatever you want to call it, because I really didn't open my eyes because I didn't have eyes at that point. But when I came to, I was lying on a bed in what felt like a room, but it was in this area. Everything was made of energy. The walls, the floors, the ceiling, everything's made of energy, and it was very malleable. Like you could almost reach out and touch it, and it would just vibrate. And I learned later that these rooms, like everything there, are controllable through mental manipulation. In other words, whatever a being needs a space to be, whether it's a private area to acclimate to the other side, or a life review area, or just you want to create your own space for a while. All it takes is you're using mental the energies that you have to manipulate the energies that are around you, which are their energy is everywhere. There's nowhere that it's not, and that entire realm is energy based, and so are we. So that's what it's our natural habitat, if you want to call it that, and our natural form is energy based. We take on a physical body in this world because in the physical universe, in order to exist in and interact with this universe, we have to take on a body that is physical. So that's why when we're inside, there's a connection that comes from, there's different connections from all over the the form that you are, and it comes down to one point right about where the sternum is in your chest, and then that connects directly to the body, and that's how you control everything that the body does during your lifetime. And then when you die, that that connection slowly, dissipates and then disconnects. So that's what happens when you die. It just disconnects. It doesn't hurt at all when you die. It was like it wasn't even like going to sleep. It's like I'm there, then I'm not. I could. It's like walking into the next room. It was no, there was nothing to it. But it took me a while to get acclimated to being on the other side because I had no real concept of where I was yet. And being 7 years old, you don't have a concept of death. You don't know what's going on. It's a cool looking place, but you don't really know where you are. You don't know who these beings are. Why do they look strange? And but once I got used to it, they told me that there is an experience that all beings go through called a life review. And they took me to a different area where there were these, it was like a long hallway, and then there was recessed rooms off of that on both sides. And each room had its own pod that your body could just, your energy form could lay down in, and then the cover would slide over and seal you in, and then the pod made telepathic connections to you, and that's how it would read basically who you were, like what your energy signature was, so it knew what being you were, and then it would go uh, bring up your last lifetime or any lifetime that you wanted to review, which I did later on. Um, and what it does is it shows you not just what you said or did during your lifetime, but it shows you from the perspective of the people you said and did it to. And so you feel everything, good, bad, or indifferent. It doesn't matter. Like if you, like I'll give you an example. A couple years before I had my first near-death experience, I stole a little Matchbox car from my cousin. I thought, oh, it's a cool car. I just want to take it. I'm not trying to steal. Just wanted something he had, and I took it home with me. Didn't realize that it was something his father had given him that he really loved, and so he had been panicking for days. Mom, where's my car? I can't find my car. Help me find my car. And I felt the sadness and the panic that he felt when he couldn't find his car. And I remember when I first came back, one of the first things I wanted to do was go find that car and give it back to him because I couldn't stand him being sad because of something that I'd done. That was one of the biggest things. It's like we get to see and feel everything that we do. If you help somebody, just because, not because you're expecting something out of it, but just because you want to or you can. The feeling you get is so amazing and beautiful that it goes beyond description. The one big energy that's on the other side is love. It's unconditional. And a lot of people say that word, but they don't really conceive of what it means. We think of unconditional love, but then we act like the being that created the universe has conditions for us in order to earn that love, and that's not at all the case. We get that love automatically. We have to cut ourselves off from it to deny it, to be away from it, because it's always there. It's a basic building block of everything in the universe. And so when you feel love on the other side, like love on this side is filtered. Everything is filtered through your human brain, your human body. And and frankly, this human form is pathetic in as far as translating feelings or um, sensing things in the universe. When you're back to your normal energy based form, everything is multiplied 1,000-fold. Like if someone sends you love from this side, it's multiplied. It feels like you're wrapped in a warm blanket on a cold night, or you're under a cold waterfall on a hot summer day. It's the most incredible feeling. Like you just want to just stay there forever and a day. and so anyway, at that point, I hadn't really done much, good, bad, or indifferent. At 7 years old, you haven't done a lot in your life. So my life review was very short, kind of to the point. I got at least a concept of what it was, and like I said, the main thing that when I'd stolen my cousin's car, I really felt the sadness and the panic that he felt, and it changed how I acted because I've that's the only time I've ever stolen anything in my entire life. That feeling still stuck, even to this day. I'm 50, almost 54 years old, so this was 47 years ago, and I still remember that feeling as vividly as if it happened yesterday. So everything has that much of an impact in a near-death experience. But once I got done with that, I was able to. Um, they told me I could go look around, basically, and um, I immediately found myself in this field. It was very mountainous region with a deep valley below me. There was a mountain going up to the right of me. There was mountains across the way from me, um, and this field was just full of flowers of every color: purple, blue, red, pink, white, yellow, everything. And every single color has its own sound. That's the one thing that's very different about being on the other side. Colors have sounds, and each color has its own different one. So when you have a multicolored layout in front of you, like say a field of flowers, that each one's different colors, it sounds like a chorus, and it's the most beautiful sound. I've tried to find anything like it since I've been back. um, some relaxation music comes somewhat close, but there's nothing on earth like the sound I heard in that field. Um, but I just laying there and I didn't recognize the area. Um, I do remember there was a um, kind of an old style log cabin near me, and directly behind that, in I don't know, 2 3 miles away in the distance, was a mountain with a very weird top on it. It was like it went up like a normal mountain on both sides, but then at the top it actually had like a slant to it on the top. It was different than any other mountains I saw around me or had seen. And come to find out later on, my I remember that mountain. My grandmother was the only one who ever believed my near-death experiences when I came back, and she asked me could I draw it, and I wasn't very good at drawing, but I did the best I could. I kind of drew a just basic mountain. I drew that slant because that's one thing I remember about it. It has that slanted top on it. And she said, "That looks so familiar. Let me." And she went and started looking through her encyclopedias because this was 1978. We didn't have the internet or Chat GPT or any of that stuff back then. So we had to do it the old-fashioned way. We had to pull out our old encyclopedia, start flipping through the pages. But she remembered it was something in Europe, and when she got to a certain page, she ran back in the room and she showed me this picture. And I said, that's it, it's my mountain. It was the Matterhorn in Switzerland. And I have never been to Switzerland, and I've never even been outside the United States in this life. Still haven't been, other than the Caribbean. So I had never seen a picture of this mountain. I'd never seen pictures of anything in Europe at that point. And in fact, I didn't until I got probably into late elementary school or early middle school. So, but I found out later on in my second NDE that this particular field, the cabin, this whole scene was a place that I had lived 3 lifetimes ago. What I considered my best perfect life, at least recently, and it was a place that I had fallen in love with during my lifetime there, and it had stuck with me ever since. So even every lifetime since then, whenever I have my life review and I'm free to move around, I find myself in that same field every single time. And it took me, let me think, another 7 years till my next near death experience to find out why. Like I had no idea why I kept showing up there. But after while I was in the field, I kept I could see the sun setting, and it was set at a different speed than it does here. You could see the motion as it was like this fast. You could see it like everything was moving that fast, and I could speed it up or slow it down depending on what I wanted. But the stars came out, and unlike here, where they're just little points of two-dimensional light way off in the distance, there they look like they're different distances. It's three-dimensional and it's interactive, and you can actually, it looks like you can reach out and touch them. They're so close, and each one has its own pulse of light, and you can see the pulses coming out from it in every direction, um, and connecting each star to each other and every star in the galaxy to us. Everything is the one thing I learned both NDEs, and the biggest lesson that I learned and I try to teach other people is that everything is connected in this universe and the next. Um, People, things, places, stars, galaxies, the entire universe down to its last atom is connected to everything else. That's how we move around. I learned I could, I was in the field in Switzerland. Then next thing I knew, I was up in space, looking down on the Earth, and it was the first time I'd ever seen the Earth from the outside. And the I remember later on because I got into astronomy and astrophysics, and I remember there was an Apollo astronaut who described when he took this full photo of the Earth from space on the way back from their mission to the moon. He said, looking down at the Earth, that you couldn't see the lines. There was no countries, there was no politics, no religion, no separation. It was all just one planet that we all shared. And that feeling like not necessarily in words, but the feeling was heavy, you know, on me at that moment looking down at the earth because all I saw was this big, beautiful, glowing blue, green, and brown orb in in space with nothing, you know, and nothing else in sight except the moon. And I mean, obviously there was a sun in the distance. And there's other planets, but it just felt like we're all alone in this little tiny world in the middle of nowhere. And you know, you just want. I just felt like, you know, like I wanted to take care of this little planet right there. Like this is my home. I want to take care of it. And that feeling has stuck with me probably more than anything because it's guided my entire life since. Wanting to make things better, wanting to help people, and make the world better by doing so. But I was able to explore the solar system. I basically saw just about every planet and moon there is. I explored the asteroid belt, went to the sun. Um, at that time, I didn't know anything about space, so it was kind of cool. It was like finding a cave of wonders, you know, and someone tells you, "Hey, go check it out." You know, you're perfectly safe. You can go wherever you want. You know, have at it. And it was like that for me. Um, but that whole experience took most of a year on the other side, and that's one thing I learned is time there versus here is way different. Here we think of time as a linear thing. There's yesterday, then there's today, then there's tomorrow, and they're separate things. But when we learn is on the other side is there's no separation. Time doesn't have any meaning there. You can speed things up, slow things down. You can turn a moment into an eternity or an eternity into a moment. Like a lot of times people describe meeting their loved ones on the other side, and their loved ones say, you know, for me, that your lifetime passed in a moment. And it's really what it's like. Um, you know, you could, like, I explored the whole solar system in detail for what felt like months. But when I got back, I'd only been dead clinically for 6.5 minutes. And trying to reconcile that, especially at the age of 7, that was hard. It took me a month to really get used to how time passes on Earth again, because um, over there everything feels so natural, but when you come back, boy, it's hard. Um, First of all, you feel like this expansive being. You can become as big or as small as you want to be, but you feel this is like this giant genie, like Robin Williams and Aladdin. You know, phenomenal cosmic power, itty bitty living space. You know, that's what our body is like to us when we come back. It's this tiny little space that we got to fit this giant being into, and trying to do that is it hurts. It's physically painful when you first come back. Light hurt my eyes. I couldn't open my eyes for hours. Um, you feel like everything's being jumbled together. I couldn't understand verbal speech for a couple of days. Like my doctors were asking me questions and I couldn't understand what they were saying because um, I was used to telepathic communication on the other side. From the moment my guide spoke to me in the corner of my hospital room till when I came back, everything was telepathic. I was able to move from place to place. All I had to do was focus on where I was, where I wanted to be. Boom, you're there that quickly. There's no there's no passage of time. No, I'm walking from point A to point B. It's like teleporting from one place to another, and that's what I'm talking about with a connection. How everything's connected. That's how we do this because everything, every point in space and every point in time is connected to each other. So it's like if you think about it like a piece of string laid out on the table. and at one end is the past, the other end is the future, and in the middle is where you are right now. You've got to think about when like you're walking along that string. That's linear passage of time, like we're used to it here. But on the other side, imagine taking that string and crumpling it up into a big ball, where all parts of the string touch all other parts of the string. That's what time and space are like on the other side. We're jumping from one to the other, going to the past, going to the future, um, going from anywhere. Like I was in my second near death experience. I was able to cross to the other side of the galaxy in less time than it takes you to blink. To do stuff like that, the only way it happens is if everything is connected directly, where there is no distance, no time between the two. So like the first one was like the first near death experience. It was partly scary at first, but mostly it was filled with wonder. And every time I closed my eyes, I would see parts of what I'd seen, and it was like being right back there again. And I was like at the end, I don't know, somewhere out by Neptune, I think, and I heard the same voice in my head, my guide, and he was calling me back, and I felt my grandmother. Her thoughts were, is he going to be okay? Please don't let him die. And that and his voice both drew me back instantly. I was right next to my grandmother in the hallway, and I could see my body lying there. The doctor's still working on it, and it was like there, time hadn't passed, but I'd had this whole litany of experiences on the other side in the moment between when I was up in the corner to when I was next to my grandmother. So like that one moment from boom to boom, there's this whole set of experiences in between. And my guide was still with me, and he said, "It's time for you to go back." And I said, "What do you mean go back?" I said, "I don't want to leave here. This is such a beautiful place. Can I stay?" And he said, "No." Um, he said, "No. There's a lot of things you still have to do." And I had been shown the things that I needed to do in this lifetime, and I didn't know why the things that were going to happen. I would find that out the second near death experience, but I knew that there was a lot of pain and suffering coming. And when you've seen this gorgeous, beautiful, wonderful experience, and you spent basically what feels like a year to you in that experience, and then you've got to come back to being a small, tiny thing, that we are, and suffer pain, off and on for the rest of your life, um, and be limited. It's it's really hard to justify that to yourself, and he really had to be very convincing. Like there's stuff you need to do, not only for yourself, but for other people. There's people you need to help, but also there's things you need to do for yourself, which you will understand later. But he had to really convince me to make me come back because I did not want to come back at all. I if honestly, if someone came to me today and said, you know what, you've done everything you need to do, and you can go right now. Are you ready to go right now? I like my stuff. I'll let someone else figure it out. See ya. I wouldn't hesitate a second. So, but yeah, that's what, like, when I try to tell people about what a near death experience is like, that first one is really what I come back to, because as amazing as the second one was, as much information as I came back with from that, the first one was my introduction to what a near death experience is like. It's that first first finding out, like when you've never died before, you've never seen the other side, or at least you don't remember seeing the other side, and to see it and hear it and feel it and experience it and learn about it, and going from place to place in instantaneously telepathic communication. I mean, it's like being told you can go spend a lifetime in Disney World, or your favorite, think of your favorite place in the world. You can go there for a year, but then you got to go back, and coming back is like going from Disney World to a sewer. It's that much of a giant swing as far as what this world is like after you come back versus before you go. Because before you go, this is all you're used to. This is all you know. But when you come back, you know something way different, and it changes your entire perspective as far as how you see this world, how you see other people, how you see yourself. And so that's why I try to communicate to people who haven't had these experiences before, is that, you know, maybe you haven't had that experience, but you can act as if you have, in the way of how you treat other people, how you decide to act in everyday life, how you react to things that happen to you. All of that is something you can control. And that's what I do that consciously because of what I experienced on the other side. But anybody can do that. You don't have to have a near death experience to change how you interact with the world. So anyway, that was the first experience.
That is absolutely incredible. My question is, how did you carry that and continue living through the world when you're a new person with all this experience living where people don't even understand? How did you carry that with you through your childhood?
It was the hardest thing I've ever gone through, and as much as like the head injuries and the back injury and the pain and suffering, as bad as all that has been, even depression and suicidality and other things that I've gone through over my lifetime. Honestly, the hardest thing I've had to go through is being here versus there. Um, and the first, I want to say, 20 or so years after I came back from that first one was the hardest part of it, because the only person, literally the only one who believed me, was my grandmother. And I found out much later, actually very recently, like in the past year, that there's a reason for that. She uh, was not just a random family member. She is actually a being who's been around from very early in the universe. She was one of the first species that physically incarnated in this universe after it was first formed. So she's been around for a long time, and uh, had had run into my guide first, several hundred years ago, and then through him me. So that's why she was incarnated as my grandmother. But that's why she believed me, because she knew it was true. She was actually far more connected to the other side throughout her life here than I have ever been, even through those near death experiences, because she never had to have them in the first place. Like, she knew all of it was true. So, but yeah, for to have my parents, my friends, later my coworkers, everybody just laugh at me or deny it outright, or I had, the time I was going to church on a regular basis, my parents raised me going to church and to so I could make the decision later on whether I wanted to continue that when I was old enough, and to have um, people I considered religious leaders, people that I would go to ask questions, just automatically deny my experiences completely as if they'd never happened. And the hardest part of it was my experience didn't match what I had heard about as far as near death experiences, because back then, the only experiences most people heard about were Christian themed. They were religious. The people talk about long white tunnel, meeting their dead relatives, seeing Jesus and angels and church, and it was all that those thematic elements were part of like every near death experience most people had heard of. Mine was completely different. I had none of that. I had no dead relatives at the time. I think my first relative didn't pass away until I was in my let's see, it was 1990, so I was almost 20 years old. Um, I never experienced the white tunnel. I was in the hospital room, and then I was on the other side automatically. I never saw Jesus or any angels or a church, um, but I had never felt at home in church, and I always wondered why. And once I got to the other side, I think I realized why, because I realized that there's more to life, especially on the other side, than what most religions will teach you. And there's actually a lot that science and religion together can teach us, and we can learn a lot about the universe that we live in with both of them working together. But the problem is they think that they're mutually exclusive, and they're actually not. Um, but a lot of people, I understand now, looking back with 2020 hindsight, that a lot of people aren't ready to hear what what I tell them about the other side. And I've learned that you have to kind of just put things out there and accept that not everyone's going to understand it, not everyone's going to accept it. There's going to be people who will just automatically deny it outright. But when their time comes, either to understand it in this life or to pass over themselves and see it firsthand, they'll they'll understand when it's their time. So it's not up to me to convert them, convince them, um, tell them they're wrong, because everyone has a different experience, and they're unique for a reason, because we're unique. Every being is unique. So the fact that there's hundreds of different kinds of near-death experiences is the way it's supposed to be. We're not supposed to all have the same one, because if you're a scientific mind or an atheist or an agnostic, you're not going to accept a religious experience. It would take you longer to accept the fact that you're dead if you have an experience that doesn't match your mindset. And the same the other way around. If you're very religious, um, and you've gone to church every Sunday or Saturday or whatever day of the week you go, and you have a metaphysical scientific experience like mine was, or Dr. Ibn Alexander had with his, um, you're not going to accept that either. So near death experiences are tailored to us, to our specific mindset, of the being that we are. So that's why there's so many different kinds of near death experiences. And but like I said, to go through all that with people not believing me, especially when you're young, you want to be accepted. You go through the teen years, especially. That's when everybody's doing what their friends are doing, and you're used to peer pressure. People do stupid things because they're trying to impress their friends or get accepted by certain groups of people. And when you go through those years, and you tell people this wild, crazy story that none of them believe, and they all think you're nuts. It makes it a little harder to go through those years, especially when you feel like you're alone. But I somehow made it through, and I was able to um, eventually. I started going places and talking to people about my experiences. I went to several near-death experience conferences, saw and heard other experiences that some of which matched mine, some of which didn't match anything that I heard. And I learned that there was more to near death experiences than any of us had suspected. And so I started to study them. I've read or listened to or watched at least 3 or 4 thousand experiences by this point. And I watched several a week just to see what else is out there. And I realized that once I knew that there was other people like me out there, um, not only that, my experience wasn't alone, but that I wasn't, because that's the hardest part is feeling like you're alone in this, like you have to deal with the massive questions and the the concepts that you get that just are stuck in your head 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And to know that there's nobody out there that you can share this with, that you can bounce ideas off of and get their input, that's the hardest part of it. But once I found other people, it was like I'd been reborn. And I can't think of any other way to describe it. And that's why I'm so glad that these days people who have near death experiences have the internet and social media and near death experience groups online, and there's groups that meet in person all over the country and all over the world. Like INS is a group, an international group for near death studies, and they have groups all over the world that meet on a regular basis. They have so many resources now that we didn't have when I had my experiences. I mean, 1978, 1985, there was no internet, there was no social media, there was nothing but encyclopedias, Britannica, and whoever you happen to meet in person. There was no way to. I couldn't just call somebody up on the phone and say, "Hey, have you had a near-death experience this week?" It doesn't work like that. So, in a way, I wish I'd grown up in this era to have the near death experiences then rather than back when I had them. But on the other hand, I think it made me stronger in a lot of ways. And it made my experiences that much more powerful where I'm the only one who's seen this for the long. I mean, yes, I'm alone and that sucks. But at the same time, I'm the only one who's seen this place. And boy, are they missing out, you know? To look at other people walking down the street and wonder, have they seen it? Have they seen it? And realize probably most of them haven't, because I mean, even now, I think the statistics say between 5 and 10%, maybe no, I'm sorry, 5 to 6% of the entire population of the planet has had near-death experiences or something similar. So if you think about that, it means 1 out of every 20 people that you see walking down the street has had an experience, but that means the other 19 haven't. So that's a lot of people that are missing out on one of the greatest things I have ever seen or experienced in my life. The greatest thing. There's nothing like it on this planet. There's nothing like it in this life. The sounds, the colors, everything is so much more vivid there. Um, Telepathic communication is instantaneous. Moving place to place is instantaneous. If you want to create something, all you have to do is imagine it. You can, like, if you ever see the movie What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams, other than some elements of the storyline, what's going on with him and his wife in the movie, what happens on the other side as far as instantly creating an entire pocket universe that you can live in? and move around in, that's exactly how it is. I mean, you think about it, and and it exists right in that moment. You don't have to build it; it's there. And to come back to a place where everything takes so much time and so much effort, and it's so hard and it's painful, and and you get worn out, and you have to go rest for a while, and it's the complete opposite of what that experience is like. And that's why I try to describe people, and especially to those who fear death, because that to me is the worst thing in this lifetime, in any lifetime, is people who fear death because they've been raised to, because they've been taught to, because they've been programmed to. And there's absolutely nothing to be afraid of. And the bad thing about it is people think, well, I have to fear this thing because people told me to. But if you talk to those people, they haven't seen it either. So why are you taking their advice on what the other side is like? It's like you need to fix your car, and you go ask the homeless guy down in the corner for for advice on how you fix your car. Why would you do that? If you want to know how to fix your car, you talk to a car mechanic. If you want to know what the other side is like, talk to someone who's had a near-death experience. And that's why I try to get my stories out there to as many people as I can, because I feel like if there's even one person in this world who has to go to their death, or to their passing, fearing that moment where they feel like they have to fight it with everything they have, and their families have to keep them alive on machines because death is final and there's nothing else. There is so much else. There's so much else. And to fear that is the thing that I will never ever understand. To the day I die, I will never understand people fearing what I saw. And I understand it's because they haven't seen it. That people fear what they don't know and they don't understand. And that's been true since we crawled out of the caves. But if I can dispel that, if I can talk to people and they can come out of it saying, I don't fear that anymore, I'm looking forward to that, then I've done my job. That's all I want. I'm not here to fix the world. I'm not here to cure cancer. I'm not here to build a building or write a book. I'm here to help people. And the biggest way I feel like I can help people is to let them live their lives fully and completely with no fear of what comes next. Because that is the only thing that holds them back, is fearing, like, oh, if I do this, I'm going to die. If I do that, I'm going to die. And dying is bad. Dying is evil. Dying, you got to fight it tooth and nail. It's like that poster, the frog being swallowed by the stork, and it's got its hands around the stork's throat, like, not today. Hold on to that last breath. And that's how people view death. And it's the saddest thing to me, because there is so much beauty and wonder and amazement. Like, you could spend, I spent, like, my second near death experience, I spent the equivalent of a decade, over a decade on the other side. And I felt like I barely touched the tip of the iceberg. So I mean, there are people like, between my, not the last lifetime, but yeah, between the last lifetime and this lifetime, I think I spent the equivalent of, I died in 1917, born in 1971. So what, 50 some years? I think 53 or 54 years. Imagine if I was dead for 7.5 minutes and experienced a decade on the other side. Imagine what 53 years on the other side is like. I mean, wow. You know, I gotta tell people, it's like fearing death is like fearing going to Disney World or to the most beautiful place you can think of. Like, imagine the most beautiful island you've ever seen or the most beautiful countryside you've ever seen, and someone telling you you can spend eternity there and in every other place you've ever imagined. Why would you fear that? Like, we tell people to they're supposed to be afraid and they're supposed to fight death with everything they have, and death is nothing more than just a transition. You're walking through a doorway to the next room. It's that simple. There's nothing to it. You don't. It's not like you're. Oh, I'm dying. I'm dying. Oh. It's not like that at all. It's not this horrible. In fact, if you have ever seen somebody die, and I've seen a lot of people die in my life. My mother used to work in a nursing home. I used to work in a hospital. I've been to hospice before, and I have seen people die in their last moments, including children. And if anybody should fear death, it's children because they haven't even lived yet. But these people, every single one to the last person, in their very final moments, right before they finally pass over, they have the most beautiful smile on their face. A lot of them will, you can hear, they'll start talking about people they see. They aren't even seeing you anymore. They're seeing people who have come to greet them, and they have this beautiful smile on their face that it takes a mortician to remove. It's that strong, and they're seeing that in their final moments, and they finally understand in that moment there is nothing left to fear because this place is not a dark and dreary and hell. It's not a hellscape. In fact, hell doesn't even exist. The hell is a place that certain religions made up to control people. It's as simple as that. I can't explain it any simpler than that. There is nothing. The closest thing to hell on the other side is people who choose to segregate themselves because they think they either need to be punished for something they did in their most recent life, or they feel like they don't deserve the light and the unconditional love that's around all of us there. But they do this by their own choice. They're not forced there, they're not thrown there. It's not, there's no devil with a pitchfork, there's no flames and, burning and none of that stuff. It doesn't exist. And as soon as they're ready to accept that they're being selfish and self-serving and choose to leave that area, they're out just like that. Just as quick as they went in, they can come right back out. So there's no permanent punishment. There's no permanent hellscape that people go to because they've been bad or, did something that some religion tells them is bad. There is, what we call bad is a judgment call. If um, if if you got a minute, I'll tell a quick story. Um, it's a little adage or parable that I used to tell people. If you imagine two guys standing in a rainstorm, one looks at this rainstorm and says, hey, it makes everything dark and gray and dreary, and I can't do anything outside, and it turns everything into mud, and it's miserable, and it makes my sciatica act up, and rain is bad. And the other guy standing in the same exact rainstorm says it makes the flowers bloom. It gives food and nutrients to the plants that I grow and the foods that I grow in my garden. It cleans the air. So therefore, rain is good. Now, these two people are standing in the exact same rainstorm. The rain is not good or bad inherently. It's only good or bad based on our judgment call of it. That's the same for everything in this life. Everything there's things now that we consider bad that we once considered good. Slavery was acceptable for hundreds of years. Um, child brides are still acceptable in some countries in the world. Um, I think of another good example. I mean, there's so many things. If you think about all the things that we've done throughout history that we once accepted widely and thought were good things, and that we don't consider good anymore. Did those things change or did we? That's what I try to tell people. Bad and good is nothing more than a judgment call. If you go to the other side, that's why there's no hell. Because to punish you for doing something that had to be created in the first place is asinine. And there's no being that could create a universe and everything in it with that much beauty who would be so petty and so small as to punish you for doing something that he, she, or it created. And that's one thing, people think they have to be, good little, goody two shoes, and they have to never think bad thoughts or, um, I was two lifetimes ago, I was as bad as you could be. I wasn't Hitler bad, but I hurt hundreds of people, and I mean in a bad way. And when I had my life review after that life, and it's the same life review I saw later on in my second near death experience, that thing broke me. To this day, I still remember every minute of that life review. I remember every face I saw, kids out in the street begging for food, begging for money, whatever people could give them because of something that I had done. Now you talking about that's a bad person if there was one. I'm not in hell. I'm not being punished for the rest of eternity. I'm not suffering. You know what? I decided I wanted to balance myself out. I did not like who I was in that lifetime. I was supposed to be someone different, but I chose to let greed and my ego control what I did. And because of that, I took what should have been a good path and warped it into a bad one. And because of that, I chose this lifetime, the one I'm living right now. That's why the pain, that's why the suffering, the stuff that I've gone through, I chose it. Because in order to truly atone for something that you did where you harmed, not a bad thing, you can't think of it as good or bad, but harm. Think of it as harm versus help. If you harm other beings, especially intentionally, that puts your soul, your karma, in an imbalance. And the only way to balance it back out is to experience the same level of pain and suffering that you visited on others in that lifetime. You can imagine Hitler might not be in hell, but I guarantee that guy has been through a bunch of lifetimes like I'm going through right now because one lifetime wouldn't cover it. Trust me. And but we do this voluntarily. Nothing, there's no being that forced me to do this. I want to make that very, very clear. Like some people think, well, God made you do this, or you were forced to. No, I chose this because I couldn't stand how I felt about who I was, and I wanted to be a better being. I still want to be a better being, and so I chose this life, the pain and the suffering. But I couldn't just choose the pain and suffering. I had to choose to turn it into something good. Like some people, maybe they got abused as kids and they turn around and become bullies or abusers later on. They're continuing the cycle that they themselves were subjected to. I couldn't do that. I had to change. I had to consciously take the pain and suffering, and instead of inflicting it on other people, I had to turn it into sympathy, to empathy, and to compassion for other people. And that has what has defined this entire lifetime for me. And it's what I came here to do. Because of that lifetime that I harmed people, I wanted nothing more than to do the exact opposite. And it came entirely 100% from me, not from any other source, not from any other being. In fact, if I had chosen to live this life exactly like I lived that one, there is no being in the universe that could stop me from doing it. None. And nor would they try. Not even the being we call God or whatever you want to, like I call that being source because it's the source of all the love in the universe, it's the source of everything in the universe, source of all of us. So I call it source. The source, God, creator, whatever you choose to call that being, even God would not interfere in the plan you created for your life because that is what free will is about. All of us have it. Every being on this side, every being on the other side. We all have free will to do as we choose because otherwise we are not living our own life. That would be another being living through us. So the only way for us to live a a full, complete life on both sides is for us to have autonomous free will to do as we will, good, bad, or indifferent. But we also have a conscience, like to where if your soul, if your karma is out of balance, you know it, you feel it at the core of your very being, you feel it. And the only thing that most of us want to do when we feel that it's painful, physically painful to me to know what I did to other people in that lifetime. And the only thing I want to do is turn every single bad that every single harm that I ever visited on anybody into a doubly positive thing that I visit on someone else. So that's the those things that I've said about the other side, about hell not existing, about what all this is like. These are the main points that I want to get to across to everybody, and I try to when I talk to everyone because those are the most important things for people to know. That there's nothing to fear. That karma is a real thing. That there's no hell to fear. There's no eternal punishment. And I think if people believe that, truly believe that there's no hell, eternal punishment, there's nothing to fear on the other side, they would stop living their lives in fear and finally and totally, completely live this life and every life, you know, fully and completely while they're here, because that's what we're here for. We're not here to live in this corner. Oh God, I'm going to die someday. That's not how we're supposed to live. We're supposed to do everything we want to do and explore and, try different things. Try every food you come across. Listen to every kind of music you can think of. Talk to strangers in line at the restaurant. Whatever. Whatever you want to do it. But don't live in fear of anything, especially not the end, because it's not the end. Death is not a stopping point. It's not. There's no darkness and nothingness beyond death. There is a whole nother universe beyond death, and it's 1,000 times infinitely better than this one. I cannot possibly describe how much better it is than this. So that's, I mean, I know that I get passionate when I talk about this because for me, it's so vitally important. All of it's so vitally important. I mean, there's things that are about me and things that I'm supposed to know and do and all that. That's separate for me. The main thing for me is I just want to help people stop living in fear, stop hurting each other. Live consciously, live fully. That's the main thing. Those two things: live consciously, and live fully. That's it.
Absolutely. And you're right that fear is the thing that stops people from living. Uh, Totally. What is amazing to me is you've had all these brain injuries, but you are so clear. You've described what happens on the other side, how it works in so much detail that I mean, I know I've spoken to so many people and I've read so much myself as well. that I know quite a bit and I've had my own experiences. But for someone who didn't know, I think after listening to you, they would absolutely understand how it works, because you explain it so well. You've explained it in more detail and more clearly than I've ever heard anybody else explain it. So thank you for that.
You're very
Yeah.
welcome, and thank you for letting me do that because it's like I said, it's so important to me to help people, and like I said, to if I go out of this life and I feel like there's somebody I could have helped that I didn't help, that's the only regret I would ever have. I don't regret living. I don't regret pain. I don't regret suffering. I don't regret meeting bad people who ended up hurting me. The only thing I would ever regret is not helping someone if I had the chance.
Well, if you're thinking that you hurt so many people, but how many could be listening to you speaking, and how many lives are you now impacting,
That's exactly
who
the
then
point.
speak to others, and it has this ripple effect because
And
it's
that, like I
just
said, that's
paying
why
it
I'm glad
forward.
I'm alive in this era.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I wish I'd been born in this era, but at the same time, I understand things now that I wouldn't have understood if I'd been born more recently. It took me the last 40 years to truly understand, and I still am figuring things out even as we speak. So um, I want to. That's kind of the point of why I'm doing this, not just like my posts on Facebook are the same way. A lot of people see those people who see me doing interviews like this, and the more people it gets to, like I can reach only so many people in person, but something like this, I could reach who knows how many people, and that's the whole point. I mean, it's not about just okay, well, I hurt one person here, so I'm going to help one person over there. I want to help everybody. I don't care how many people I have to talk to. Like I used to go, like I said, I used to go around to different places and talk about my near-death experiences and um, participate in conferences and panel discussions and things like that for almost 25 years before I became disabled and couldn't do it anymore. But the best part for me was afterwards when people would come up to me and want to ask questions or tell me about their experiences or hey, I lost my grandmother or my mother or I lost my brother my son to suicide last year and there's that look in their eyes like please give me something to hold on to, give me something that will make this worthwhile, that will allow me to get through this. And I can sense that about people. And I used to tell people I will stay as late as I need to stay until everyone in this line has asked your question, has told me what they need to tell me, has found out what they need to know. I don't want anyone going home saying, I wish I'd been able to say something and I didn't get a chance. Sometimes I would stay till midnight. I didn't care. So that's what I like to help people as much as I can.
Do you think that you planned your near-death experience at 7?
Do I think I what?
That you planned your NDE at 7 years
Plan it?
old for your life?
I don't think so. I know that before we come into a life, we plan for challenges and obstacles we want to overcome, things that we want to push back against us, so that we have to define who we are by, either succumbing to something or overcoming it. So, for example, the bullying that I experienced, the abuse that I went through, all of that was part of me defining who I am and who I want to be as a being. But near-death experiences, I don't think are planned per se. I mean, I'm sure there are beings on the other side who probably did, because sometimes we need a reminder to keep us on the path that we're supposed to be on, or to push us back. Like like if you're, let's say you're a mother and you have a little child who you're supposed to be walking down this certain path and they keep wandering off the side over here, wandering off the side over there, and you have to kind of okay, come on back over here, come on back over here. That's what a near death experience is. It's basically okay, get back on your path. And so I think they're planned on the other side, but not by me. not by the people who have them. They are a part of a lot of people's life experiences because not only are we finding out things that we need to know for our own lives, but as I found out later on, all of us collectively, all the people who experience near death experiences are laying a foundational groundwork for something that's coming later on, a big thing. And when I say big thing, I mean a worldwide consciousness shift that's going to affect everyone. It's part of humanity's evolution. There's been other moments similar to it, like the Renaissance, um, even the 1960s here in the United States with the civil rights movement. There are times during in all throughout history where something major has to happen in order to push a country or society in general in a certain direction. And this is going to be the biggest one that's ever happened in the history of humanity. So that's why there's more people coming back with near death experiences than ever before. You know, I mean, part of it's just simple math. You know, there's more people on the planet, so 5% of more people is going to be more people having experiences. But there's also just more in general having them and being sent back because they want to make sure that as many people as can be reached are reached and understand that we need to stop living in fear. We need to stop acting like we're not connected to each other and to the planet we live on, and to start acting different and acting better to improve this world to make because we don't have anywhere else to go. I know Carl Sagan said it a long time ago, like, this is the only planet we have. If we screw this up, where else are we going to go? We can't exactly go live on the moon. We can't go live on Mars. We don't have the ability to terraform it. So where are we going to go? This is all we got. So if we
Yeah.
screw this world up, we're screwed. And so a lot of people right now act like they don't understand that. And a lot of them are doing that deliberately. So there has to be a massive shift in consciousness. And by consciousness, I don't mean like, oh, I'm awake consciousness. I mean like how we view ourselves, how we view our connection to other people, and how we view our connection to the world around us. So that's what we're doing is laying the groundwork for that.
And that brings us back to you saying nothing is inherently bad, or
Hmm.
because the things that are happening that we perceive as bad are opportunities to wake up.
Exactly. The bad stuff that we consider bad, like harm. Like I said, it's not about bad versus good. It's more about harm versus help. What helps more people versus what harms more people.
Yep.
You know, if you think about Martin Luther King versus Hitler, you can tell there's a huge difference between those two people. But it doesn't have to be that stark of a difference. There's everyday people who right now are using their power, their money, and their position to harm others deliberately. It happens right now in the country I live in. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in South America, the Middle East. It's happening everywhere. And if you think the beings on the other side don't see that, don't realize what's going on, think again. They know all of it. They know it's coming because they this has all been laid out. What's gonna not only what's happening now, but what's going to happen. Yeah, there's going to be obviously some differences as far as when things happen, how things happen, because we all have free will still. But collectively, as a species, we're going to be heading in a certain direction. And it's not so much about fixing a bad thing as bringing us back to the connection we share on the other side. Because when we're on the other side, we don't doubt that connection. We feel it in everything. And it's only when we come to our physical body and the physical world, most of us choose to forget the other side. Because if you went through your life from birth, knowing that you had all these other lives and you've been bad in this one, good in that one, helpful in this one, harmful in that one, um, and you knew what the other side was really like. Could you really live your life the way you should? Could you really invest in this particular lifetime, knowing that you've had hundreds of others before it, you'll have hundreds more after it? It wouldn't have the same meaning because part of the meaning of life is it ending. And by ending, I don't mean like permanently. I mean just transitioning from this world to the next and then back again. Um, but the mortality of our species, the mortality that we live with every single day, that's part of who we are. It helps define who we are as a species. Because there's other species out there that don't die. They live thousands of years, or as long as they want. If they die, it's because they choose to, not because something killed them, or they died of old age. There's no such thing. A lot of them don't even have bodies anymore because they're so evolved they don't need them anymore. And eventually we'll get to that point, but that's way down the line. But for right now, it's about bringing us back to a point where we understand that everything and everybody is connected to each other, and that we start acting like it. That's our whole problem, is people are acting like they're all separate beings. I'm in it for me. What's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? If I do this, what are you going to do for me? It's all about me, 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 me. And we even had a whole generation defined by it called the me generation back in the 80s. Um, and that's what they want us to realize, that it's not me, it's us. It's always been us. It's always going to be us. And if we act in our lives, and if we go through this world and go through our lives thinking that it's all about me and there's only me and I only need to worry about me and nobody else, we do more harm than good as a general rule. It's only when we realize that we are connected, that everything is a symbiotic relationship. Um, the animals, the insects, the plants, the air, the water, and us, we are all connected to each other. What harms one harms all. And that's what a lot of people don't realize right now. They're not evolved enough in their thinking to understand, or to even, they're so worried about, some people are so worried about where their next meal is going to come from, or how am I going to get through the month and pay my bills, or what's the president up to today, or whatever the case is, in the country where people live at, your particular leaders, and what are they up to today, where they don't have time or energy left to worry about what they're doing based on how they think of the world around them. Like how are we harming ourselves? How are we harming each other? And how are we harming the world that we all live in and share? So that's what needs to change.
I would think that when people stand together, it's when they feel that there's a threat from outside. So if it were to be a global event, it would have to feel like a global threat.
Well, that's how we've normally done it in the past. In fact, that's why a lot of these big threats like world wars and massive famine, disease, why a lot of those things happen is to bring people together to fight a common enemy. But that doesn't always work. First of all, it doesn't work for very long either. As soon as the threat is minimized or controllable, everybody goes back to the way things were. They go back to the status quo. That can't keep happening. We
So it's
need,
got
like,
to change completely. There's got to
exactly.
be a
We have to change
fundamental
how we
shift
think.
that you cannot go back to.
Yeah, like you can't. We cannot think of this world where, okay, I'm helping this right now, but then tomorrow I'm right back to my same old, same old. We can't do that anymore, and that's what needs to change is our how we think about it. And so, like I said, it's all about how we see things and then how we act based on that thinking, that based on that mindset. So once we can't just change, we can't just come up with a constant enemy because then we'll have burnout. When you're always fighting against something, eventually you just get burnt out. I don't care anymore. That's why a lot of Americans have gotten to that point where they're so used to the harmful people running things that I just need to figure out how I'm going to get through the day or the month. I don't have time to worry about politics in Washington anymore, and they stopped acting on behalf of other people because of it. And I can understand that. In some ways, I felt the same way, and I have to fight against it every day to not give in to that because it's so hard not to. But what we need is not a common enemy anymore. What we need is a common goal to reach for, a goal that is important enough, big enough, and helpful enough where everyone will say, that's worth me getting out of bed in the morning. That's worth me making the effort. That's worth me putting myself out there to make this happen. That's what's coming.
If people could see a world that is peaceful, abundant, clean, no
Mm-hmm.
more toxins, that would light them up. But I kind of get the feeling that, I mean, we've literally, the way the world's changed now, there's Big Brother watching us 24/7. Foods are contaminated, our airs are contaminated. We're being squeezed in all countries. I don't think it's just unique to a
No, it's
couple
everywhere. And we're being
because
squeezed in
it's
all ways, too.
in all ways. It's in the governments, it's in the schools, it's in all the infrastructure that currently exists. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that can just shift.
Well, it's not going to be like an overnight thing. It's not going to be a snap your fingers and everything, and we're all of a sudden in paradise.
No,
It's going to. One thing I will say, and as bad as this sounds, I have to say it because otherwise I'd be lying. Things are going to have to get worse before they get better. That's one thing I heard multiple times on the other side, because in order for things to get better, everybody has to be on the same page. And right now, there are just too many people. Like, if you think of it as like a seesaw, you got people on one side, people on the other side. On one side, you got the people who are trying to help things get better. Other ones are the ones who are trying to maintain the status quo, keep things where it's all about them. I've got the money, I've got the power, and I don't want to give it up. So the people on that side of the seesaw, basically, have got to have things happen to them where what they're doing to other people and to the world starts to affect them, their families, their friends, their people, the people that they care about. Because as long as it's happening to someone else, some random person that they don't know, that they can ignore, they're never going to change their thinking. They're never going to change their actions. So that is what's got to change. And that's why it's got to get worse first, because in order for them to be affected, I mean, think about how bad it is now, and they're still not affected, most of them. So imagine how much worse it's going to have to get before they're affected. So that's what it's going to get worse. But I promise you this because I know for a fact I've seen the layout of what's going to happen. I was walked through it in detail in my second near death experience to the point where I could recite the parts of it from memory. It's going to get way better. And I do mean like not better like anything we've ever experienced. Like if you think of how good science and music and art were during the Renaissance, that was the last really big switch in mentality. And we went from the dark ages to that, from dark, literally from darkness into the light. And if you think of how good the Renaissance was for a lot of realms in our thinking, that is nothing compared to what's coming. Nothing. Like if let's say, okay, this is where things are now. This is where they were during the Renaissance. Keep going, keep going, keep going. That's where we like way up here. That's where we're going to end up eventually when this is all done and said and done. But it's going to take time. It didn't happen overnight. It's not going to get fixed overnight. So that's one thing. Like a lot of people, they don't want to invest in something. It's going to take a lot of time or effort on their part, and that's why like I said, they're sending more people back with near death experiences and more knowledge. Like I asked to come back with full knowledge and memory of what I saw, heard, experienced, and felt on the other side because I needed that information to help people and also to make sense of other things that I was that people were asking about, including myself. But more people are coming back with more knowledge and memory of the other side. And they're spreading it. That's the great thing about the internet and social media is you can circle the globe in a second with a lot of information in where it used to take years, and you'd have to physically go see people or send them a letter or call them on the phone. We can do that in a second now on the internet. And that is going to be the biggest tool that the internet and social media are going to be the biggest tool that helps get us over the hump and helps move things in the right direction. So like right now it's being used a lot of times, like Elon Musk owns X, or what used to be Twitter. Right now a lot of the online stuff is being controlled by the harmful people, but eventually the helpful people are going to start using it to their advantage to help switch things around. But once they get better, oh boy, do it gets like it's like it goes down, it gets bad, and then it starts to slowly get up. But the more we build on that good stuff as we go along, the faster it starts moving in that direction. Like it starts slowly, but it's like a snowball going downhill. The bigger it gets, the faster it gets. So I'm gonna make sure people know that like it's gonna get bad, it's gonna take a while, but when it gets better, you're gonna really, really love the world that we live in after that. Like it's gonna be a like world where we take care of each other, take care of everybody. Nobody gets left behind. Everyone has medical care and doesn't have to worry about how much it's going to cost them. Um, People can get an education, and we're going to value education again, which is something we don't value right now. Um, we're going to value truth and information again. So the things that have gone by the wayside or that have been pushed under the rug by the people who are trying to control the rest of us is going to once it starts affecting them and they start changing their way of thinking, it's going to start helping the rest of us a lot faster because if you have less and less people holding down the bad side or the harmful side, and there's more of them on the helpful side, it's going to get a lot easier. It gets the weight goes down a lot faster. When you have more people joining us from the other side, so it will get better.
So it's not so much that the good people have to work harder, it's more that the people that are causing harm need to realize what they're actually doing.
Right? They need to realize what they're doing more so than realize it. I mean, a lot of people who cause harm, they realize what they're doing. They just don't care.
Yeah.
They need to start caring again, and like I said, they in order for them to care, in order for them to truly understand, it's like a life review for when you cross over. I didn't truly understand the harm that I had caused all those people in my previous lifetime until I went through the life review and I felt it for myself. They need to feel it. They need to understand truly what their actions have caused, because the only way they're going to do that is to have it affect them directly, them, their families, the people they care about. Because right now it's not doing that. and that's why they're getting away with it, why they keep doing it, because
Yeah,
they're not feeling any. As long as you're like if you're a person causing harm, and you don't care about causing harm, and nobody you know or care about is being affected by it, you're getting rich while you're doing it, and you're enjoying all this wonderful power you got because of it. Why would you change what you're doing?
exactly.
You wouldn't. So in order for them to change that, they've got to start being affected. It's got to start change. It's got to start negatively affecting them. Once that happens, that's when things start to change fast.
What time span are we looking at? Would it be in our lifetime?
No, it'll be. I would say. I mean, I don't. Like I said, it's going to depend on a lot of factors because free will is still a part of this equation, and that affects time as far as like if people push back harder because they want to hold on to the status quo, that might make something that we're trying to do take a little bit longer than it would have otherwise. So there's a lot of malleability in that. The plan is for, like, as far as what's going to happen, where things are now, where things are going to end up. That part's not in question. How long is the only part that's in question. But if I had to guess, based on what I saw, based on what I know is coming for the people who cause harm, based on how fast things start to move once they get affected and once they start changing their mindset, I would say within the next couple 100 years. And I know that sounds like a long time, but if you think about it, we've been here a whole hell of a lot longer than that. And it took, we've been causing, I mean, you think about all the harm we've caused. We've been around just for the last 3,000 years. We've caused more harm than good worldwide, and in ways most of us can't even describe, if we had to on a bet. So, and the more people that there are, the more people that are causing harm, and the more people there are to be harmed. So it's worse now than probably it ever was, even though there are worse situations like, the Holocaust during World War II, or ethnic cleansing in parts of Africa, or before that in Bosnia. Um, Although there are worse situations, the overall situation worldwide with everybody, if you add that up cumulatively, it's worse now than it ever has been because there are so many people who have been harmed and are still being harmed as we speak in more ways than one. It's not just financially, it's physically, it's emotionally, it's educationally, it's work wise. Every aspect of their lives is being affected by this.
Yeah,
So when you multiply that by 8 billion people, you can see why we're in such bad shape and why it's going to take a long time. Because remember, we're still adding people every year that goes by. There's more people than there were the year before. So the more people there are, the longer it's going to take. But I would say a couple 100 years is probably a good estimate.
so if it's going to get worse before it gets better, will it be worse in our lifetime or is that also
Yeah.
later?
Well, it depends on
Okay.
what you mean by your lifetime. I mean, lifetime could be, a
Or
few
like,
years for somebody in my situation. It might be 50 years or 60 years for somebody who's younger. So let's say the get worse before it gets better part would be sometime in the next 50 years. And then um, there's about a 20 to 40-year area in there where it's transitioning over from getting worse, bottoming, where we're hitting rock bottom and starting to come up on the other side. And things start to get better. And then once we hit this one point where there's more of the harmful people that have moved to the other side than are still on the harmful side, once we reach that equilibrium and it starts to shift in the other direction, it moves really freaking quickly, really quickly. Like you could do more in uh, as much harm and good could be done in a 50-year or 100-year period. Now you could do 10 times as much in the same length of time. once we start moving, more exponentially. So yeah, yeah, it'll move quickly towards the end. It's going to be slower going towards the beginning, but that's normal for most situations anyway.
Yeah. Um, I know, look, it's been a long interview, so I'd actually like to talk about your second NDE,
Oh, good.
but not
I
this
didn't know
time.
that's what time it was. I'm sorry.
And the reason is because there's so many questions that I have as well about this. Because I've heard a lot of people talk about the shift that's coming and the changes. And there are people that say on the other side, the changes already happened. It just needs to catch
Hmm.
up here on Earth times. But they
Yeah,
are
because
not
that's what I'm talking
talking,
about with the. Remember I talked about that ball of string where everything, all the
yes,
times and spaces are touching each
correct.
other.
They're all
That's
touching.
why they're experiencing that in real time because the past, the future, and the present are all happening simultaneously there. Whereas
Yeah,
we're here, we experience one, then the next, then the other. So it's
yeah.
not the same. That's why they're seeing it. That's why they know what the plan is and what's going to happen because it's already happened in their perspective.
But a lot of the people aren't sharing what the actual plan looks like. And
Mm,
but
I do.
I asked you earlier, is there any questions that are off the table?
Yeah, that
And
one is not off the table. Like there was nothing that I heard, saw, or experienced where someone on the other side said, you can't talk about this. There's no secrets. In fact, they want everyone to know.
yeah,
Because,
because
the more people who know what's coming and what they
well,
need to do to make it happen, the
so
better it's going to get and the faster it's going to get.
what would looking worse look like? What is getting worse look like? Is it famine? Is it war? Is it
War,
drought?
probably both.